So, good evening. How can we advocate for learning? So, tonight's topic is about learning, teaching, and leadership. But above all, we are looking for ways to be there, to advocate for learning, but with respect, with the perspective of a student and also for the teacher. So, here we have some sound so that we are doing great. So today was the last day of my semester at my high school. So I did a quick survey about how my students were were thinking about the class. Now I was not talking about the topics covered in class. What I wanted to know was for them as students, what was the experience within the class? And the reason why I want to do that is that my students have been students for the last 9, some of them 10, some of them 11 years. So that's a long time where they are active participants in their learning. So that means that they've had amazing teachers, they've had great teachers, and they've had some teachers sometimes that haven't been maybe the best for them. But anyhow, tonight's topic is about how can you as an individual advocate for learning. So here, if you're new to this channel, my name is Alain Faber. I've been a teacher for more than 25 years, and I'm sharing my ideas, what I learned, what I know, so that the people can better understand themselves as learners, themselves as teachers, and as leaders as well. So my show here is always worked. I always divide my show into 3 segments. First segment is about learning, everything from the learner's perspective, and also what can we do for the learner so that they learn better. The next segment is about teaching. How can you be a better teacher, but not only for a teacher that teaches as a career, but it's good for trainers, but also for people at any ages where they have to share with others what they know. Because keep in mind that if you have a teenager that is 15, there's a lot of them that are doing coaching for younger ones, they're doing tutoring for younger ones, and they are being role models for younger ones. So everybody can teach at any ages for the same reason that you have adults with a wealth of experiences and ideas that can help others. Good. So this is the plan for today, how to advocate for learning. So let's see. So my first segment is about learners and learning. So here's my first idea. So today in my science class, in my business class for grade 9 students, I asked them 3 basic questions. And the first question as a learner was to tell me what they wanted me to continue doing in my class. And the reason for that is that as a teacher, I'm always looking for what works, and they're the best people to tell me how this goes. So if you look for my science class, they go like this. What they find very helpful for them to learn better and feel comfortable in the learning environment is like this. So for science, they love to do labs, and because they do hands-on, and it's good for everybody. And the other one, many people mention in-person labs. We just finished the COVID. People are back in class. People sometimes they learn with simulation and video games. It's true, but doing hands-on lab has been amazing. The other one that they like is a 5-minute break. In my classes, they last 75 minutes. I always give them a 5-minute break in the middle of the class. That means that I plan my first half of the class, so maybe 40, 45 minutes. And then we are doing activities, group work, discussions, learning, reading, anything we need to do. And then I give a 5-minute break. And after that, we continue with extension activities. That gives them 5 minutes to go to the washroom if they need to, go on their phone, talk with their friends about different ideas. And often they talk about what we're doing in class, which is exciting. Other things they did like was the fact that I give a lot of analogies when I explain something. So I explain the topics, but I also make analogies between the learning and what is happening in their lives. And they find it's working nicely. Many people mentioned that they enjoyed the projects. They enjoyed that I gave note-taking templates. and that I have a calm and quiet room. It's not a silent room. In my class, people are either, so when we're focusing on work to do, they're working very hard. Sometimes when we have free time where people can work independently, they can listen to music. Sometimes if they like to sing a little bit, I have a singer in my class and it's always fun. And I also do what I called in science mastery checks. So it's another word for that would be exit passes. They like it because they can have rapid feedback about their learning. So that's something they would like me to continue. And as a learner, they mention a few things they would like me to add to my courses. And that's good because I'm going to use their idea for me. So the first one is they want me to see if I can create more videos for explanation. So if they want, because I don't have videos for my classes, so if they miss a class or they want to review something, they would like that. The next one, they would like more independent work. So I do have a lot of work in class. So we in person, I ask them to be in to be learning with intent. So that means that the phones are not out, their computers are not out in science. We are doing what we need to do, and then they have their 5 minutes to go on their device. Many of them would like to use their device more, and that's something that I have to decide if that could be a good idea, especially to have more independent work. The other one they like is the idea of having more team projects. So I have projects that they do in groups and others in individually, but they seem that they would like to have shorter projects in teams so they can discuss more. And here they would like more analogies, and they want to have, let's see, what are the other things? Allow students to discuss their mark. So that's from the theory that the students, if we discuss with them, we can come up with an agreement with what their mark should be. So this is the new learning with the, how do we call that? With an open room concepts and modern classroom. These are all part of their ideas. So this is what they want me to do in science so they can learn better. In my business class, there's a few things that, there's several things they mentioned that they like for learning. First, they loved presentations. Interestingly enough, some people don't like presentations, but I did in business, I made a point to have a lot of presentations for them. Many of them love presentations. In the improvement, they told me that some of those presentations could be not done only in front of the class, but some of them can be one-on-one, like I did for the final evaluation. So I'm going to look into that. They love that we had different projects that were very useful and applicable. So I like that. They like the fact that for the final performance task, I gave them the main topic about a month early. I explained to them about 10 times what I was asking for, and I asked them what was my baseline, and I told them to go beyond the baseline what I was expecting. They did enjoy that. They enjoyed that I had the specific, I had very detailed explanation, and interestingly enough, I had checklists for many of the projects. And at first, I felt that checklists were a way to tell students everything I needed, and therefore their marks was quite high. But I was discussing with some of my students, and they were saying that the checklists, for some of them, is like a game. We often talk about the gamifying learning, and they're seeing a checklist where if it's like a step, they did the first part, the checklist goes, and they felt like it was a game. So I like that. They also mentioned many of the projects, specific projects they like working with spreadsheets, and they like the 5-minute break as well. Something I did a lot with this class is that in for science class as well, when we discuss or I ask questions, before I continue, I ask a question and then I count to 5 before I move on. And the reason why I count to 5 is so I tell them a question, for example, so what is the answer for a specific question? And then I use my fingers and I move them with saying 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. I don't count out loud, but they see with my hands that I'm counting to 5. And I tell them The reason why I give you 5 seconds to answer is that some people sometimes they need to see the question, hear the question, understand what it means, come up with an answer, and then be willing to share their answer. And sometimes it takes some time. If you ask a question and then you pick the first one that raised their hand within a second, it is great, but often you notice it's the same people. When you give them 5 seconds, you notice that there's more and more people that are willing to give answers, and then you can choose a variety of people. So that's amazing. Things that they felt that I should do more is more group project, because we did group projects in class, but the ones that counted, I wanted them to do it individually. So that's something I'm going to look into. Many people mentioned they would like more presentations, and presentations in group, but also in person. I have to say that my business class is part of the French immersion program. So that means that the language skills are also very important for them. They said that they would like a little bit more time to work on the projects. And because it was a business class, I did give them quite a bit of time in class and emphasizing that they need to focus in class as if it was work, so that they can have free time in the evening. Working on the work and the learning and work balance or work-life balance, that's something I was mentioning to them quite a bit. And the next thing they wanted to do, they wanted to have more interactive activities, and I have to look into what that means. Either I have to do activities where they move around even though they could, so that's something I need to work with. So as you can see, giving a chance to my students to have a voice in what they like and what they think could improve their learning environment was amazing. So I did enjoy that tremendously. So if you're a teacher, you're a parent, you're a trainer, you're a leader, take some time to listen to your team members. By listening to them, by asking very good questions and giving them time to think about it, reflect, and give amazing answers, often people are very willing to share what works best for them. So that's what works for my classes. As I mentioned, I just did the survey with them this afternoon and this morning, and it's quite nice. So that brings us to my second segment of this podcast today about teaching. Now, when I talk about teaching here, I'll share my experience as a teacher, but also how I can bring ideas and better ways for individual, either parents, teachers, trainers, and leaders, how to better help people to share what they know. So let's see. For this section here, I'm going to talk again about how to advocate for learning. And this point here, I'm mentioning how, as a teacher, I am learning every day from my students. I was telling my students that, as I mentioned earlier, they've been in a classroom for 9, 10, or 11 years. They are professional students. They've seen plenty of teachers, trainers. They have parents, and therefore they know, they can feel and see what an environment is. So as a teacher, here are some things that I need to look into. So from what they said, they do enjoy that it's a laid-back environment. Not that it's stress-free, but that they have the opportunity to ask questions, to take risks, and then be able to show me what they can do. And it's quite important, because in a school setting, often if you go back 15 years, there were classes, there were labs, presentation projects, and therefore what happened was very linear. Some learning happened, evaluations happened, then learning, evaluations, and so on. But lately, in the last few years, what happens is that students are learning. We are giving ideas and projects. We are giving students and trainees to give us what they think is a final product. But then we give them a chance through feedback to look at what they did, but also improve on what they've done. So the whole idea here, it's a whole cycle, a cycle of learning and then working through a projects or final evaluations or final product. And then from there, you get a feedback, so that from the feedback, you build on and make something better. So that it works well in my science class, because if you take, we learn about all kind of topics, but if you think of the lab-based component of my class, the whole thing is open book for the whole year. So the first couple times we do hands-on activities or labs, it's quite messy, and it's all right. People are getting into the groove of what is to gather data to answer questions. And as soon as they've done a few cycles, then they get better, because every cycle has a question or two. They come up with what they think will happen. They create a lab or a situation where they will gather data, and then they analyze data, and then they come up with a solution or analyze what their findings. And from there, there's the next step. But every time they do so, they share with me what works, what didn't work, and what they've learned. So the following time, they are building on their skills. And I told them in the last couple of weeks that regardless of what they do with their notes, the most important thing for them to keep are all the notes about the labs. Because if they can keep that in mind, what happens is that next year, when they go to the next science class, then they will not start from the beginning of what they were this year, but they will start at the place they were at the end of this semester, and then growth can be just exponential from here. So we'll see what happens, but it's kind of interesting that way. The next one that is interesting is that as a teacher, you need to know that there are things you need to continue, things to add, but there's also things that teachers do that they need to eliminate. So as a trainer, as a parent, as a leader, sometimes there are things you do. Sometimes you have to reflect about the fact that maybe it's something that's outdated, or it's something that we used to work well, but you need to reflect on how to adapt to the current times. So here, when I looked at the information that I received from my science class, things they wanted me to eliminate completely was the old-fashioned evaluations. So they did mention that they love the idea that I do mastery checks. So often we do exit past and check times to make sure that they understand and they grow. And they felt that having a test about all questions and keeping everything silent is a good idea, but there might be better ways to do so. So I thought it was interesting. The other one they said for this one here is that group work is very important. So individual and group work. They told me that I should do more group work, but also choose the groups. And a few people mentioned that to choose the groups so they have a chance to work with everybody in the classroom. So that's a great idea, something that I have to look into, because it's not easy to make sure that everybody works with everybody in the classroom. But I think that's a great challenge. They told me it's a great way for them to make new friends, a great way for them to see different perspective. Because otherwise, if they work with the same 5, 6, or 10 people, what happens is they know well these people, but they don't know the other people in the class. So that's something I'm going to be working on. The next one would be, let's see, to avoid any independent lab so that students can share ideas with peers. So here I have to decide that independent labs are important, but finding ways maybe where they can discuss with each other so that they can talk about their findings. So that's something I'm going to be working on. I'm studying a new semester with the same science class of the same course code. So lots of learning and teaching for me. The other one I have here, let's see, mandatory group activities, because some people always like to work alone. And as a person who likes to work alone, I always give a chance for students to work either alone or in groups. So that's something that I'm going to be working with. And very nice. And here, to try to eliminate distraction from students, interestingly enough, I do find that it is important in a science class or any classes to give the opportunities for students to feel comfortable enough so that they, first of all, not to be out of control, but to be able to be themselves so that people can appreciate diversity. With my business class now, what are the things that as a teacher I need to eliminate now that I know what students like in my classes? So the one thing I need to work on here would be find a way to improve with diminishing distraction and procrastination. So here I have to find a ways to make it a game where people are on task more often, especially for students that sometimes they wait till the last minute to do the project. So that's something I have to look into. And I was talking about gamifying what I do. So that's something to look into. They also mentioned that some projects they did not like as much as others. One was about ergonomic office, especially if they work in business. The other one was working with spreadsheets. And I do understand that one of the reasons they did not like that project as well is that it was outside of their comfort zone. Many of them having a project with many layers where they had to do research and come up with a budget was something that was a much bigger project that they've ever used. And with respect to the spreadsheets, many of them had not used them, many of them had not done graphs with or used calculations for them. And I think it's an important thing as a scientist. I think being able to know the basic of a spreadsheet is important. But I might have to change some of my lessons on that. And the other one here, I say to have less lessons where I was sharing. So they would like to have more handouts and more videos so that they can learn independently. So that's something I will have to look into, because it is, I might think they were great lessons, but I was told that I need to look into that. The time of the old-fashioned lessons and lectures are no longer working, because sometimes students need to have attention much longer. So I'm going to see what I can do there. So as a teacher, I've learned a lot from my students. And if you're a teacher, a parent, a leader, keep in mind that you can learn a lot from from the members of your teams, your family members, your students, because you are with them. And if you are just open for the ideas, they might be able to share with you what they think. And that brings us to the third segment of this podcast about leadership. So how can we bring leadership in this idea of how do you advocate for learning? So here when I talk about leadership, I don't talk about just like a CEOs or so on. For me, leaders can be of all ages. Someone that is leading goals in their lives. They could be leaders in their classrooms, in their family, in their communities, or as a school principal, as a CEO, or a manager, like a group, let's say a team manager, or a team project manager. There you go. The idea here is that as a leader, you can decide what needs to happen. You can decide what you want to do. On the other hand, you don't want to become a micromanager. If you are a micromanager, that means that you don't trust as much the people in your groups, in your team, in your community. So being able to help people as a leader, I believe, so that's my perspective, that you want to give opportunities for people, learners, teachers, trainers, to be able to show what they can do. So for me, a leader allows others to become leaders. And I think that is the key part here. Because if you help others to become better leaders, then you can learn from them and yourself can become a better leader as well. So this is something to keep in mind. On this, I'm going to keep this section a bit shorter today because someone needs my help and do some tutoring tonight. And therefore, tonight's segment was about how do you advocate for learning. I mentioned how, as a learner, you can advocate for what works best for you and still know that there are different ways of learning. As a teacher, knowing that your audience are often the best people to tell you what you can do to continue doing an amazing job, but also what you can do to improve what you do. And as a leader, keeping in mind that leaders bring forward leadership in others around them. On this, thank you very much to be here, and I will see you next Wednesday at 7:30. It's been great. We have Prairie Dog here. So we have Cindy. Thank you very much for being here. It's been a pleasure to be there for you. And I will wish you an amazing day. On this, take care.